Chapter 3. The Inflation of Hope. By the time Alara entered high school, the middle-class identity her parents clung to had become a performance. They lived in the same house, but the interior was cooling. The air conditioner was now a luxury saved for the hottest Sunday afternoons. The rest of the week, they sat in the humid stillness of a country that was becoming too expensive for its own citizens. In school, the gap between Alara and her peers widened from a crack to a canyon. It wasn't just about social skills anymore, it was about capital. The popular kids weren't just the ones who were funny or pretty, they were the ones whose parents had hedged against the inflation. They wore imported sneakers while Alara's father had her local shoes resoled by a cobbler twice. They talked about summer vacations in Dubai or London, while Alara spent her break in the local library, the only place where the air conditioning was free. "Why don't you join the debate club?" her teacher, Mr. Aris, asked one afternoon. "You have the highest marks in English, you could lead the team." Alara looked at the group of students gathered at the end of the hall. They were loud, confident, and moved with an easy grace that suggested they owned the floor they walked on. The thought of standing in front of them, of trying to persuade a room full of people using only her voice, made her stomach coil. I have to get home to study, Mr. Aris," she stammered, clutching her heavy backpack like a shield. "The national exams are only 2 years away." "Alara," Mr. Aris said, his voice dropping to a gentle, almost pitying tone, "the exams are important, but the world out there, it's not a silent exam hall. People need to know who you are." She ignored him. She had to. If she admitted he was right, then the thousands of hours she had spent hunched over a desk were a waste. She doubled down. She became a ghost in the hallways, a girl defined by the silence she left in her wake. The breaking point of her childhood illusions came on a rainy Tuesday evening. Her father had come home later than usual, his tie loosened, his face a mask of gray exhaustion. "The department is restructuring again," he said, sitting heavily at the table. "They're freezing promotions for the next 3 years." Her mother stopped stirring the pot of thin soup. 3 years, but the rent is set to increase in 6 months, and Alara's university applications. "I'll take extra shifts at the consultancy firm," her father snapped, then immediately softened, rubbing his temples. "I'm sorry, it's just, I did everything right. I have the degrees, I have 20 years of service. Why is it getting harder to buy groceries?" Alara watched them from the doorway. For the first time, she saw her parents not as all-knowing providers but as two people who had followed a map that was now obsolete. They had played by the rules, the same rules they had taught her, and they were losing. She looked down at her hands, stained with blue ink from her practice essays. A cold realization settled in her chest. Her parents couldn't give her the life she wanted. They couldn't buy her the connections her classmates had. They couldn't shield her from the inflation that was eating their savings. She realized that working for someone else, even with a good government job like her father's, meant your life was always in someone else's hands. You were a line on a spreadsheet that could be erased during a restructuring. "I don't want to live like this," she whispered to herself back in her room. She looked at her textbooks. For the first time, they looked less like keys and more like heavy stones. She wanted to build her own name, to be so successful that no restructuring could touch her. But as she looked at her reflection in the dark window, socially awkward, friendless, and terrified of the sound of her own voice, she had no idea how a girl with nothing but good grades was supposed to start. The hope was still there, but it had changed. It was no longer a bright flame, it was a frantic, desperate itch. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and turn on the notification to get updated when we post a new video.